Okay, welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Just a few housekeeping items before we dig in. The first is thanks for being here. We're going to have a recording of today's webinar. So you'll receive that in your email later this afternoon. Second is closed captions available through your Zoom settings, so please utilize that. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat and our team can help you use that additional support if needed. The third is please post any questions you have in the chat or through the Q&A function on Zoom. We are going to reserve questions or the ability to answer questions until the end, but our teams are standing by and are willing to answer any questions they can through the chat function until we get to that portion of the presentation. Last is all attendees will receive a copy of this presentation and a webinar recording, again, with that email this afternoon. And the most important part is that the Early Childhood Dashboard report that we're talking about today is available now at groundworkohio.org/dashboard. So you can begin to explore that while we share with you how to navigate the data today. So again, welcome. My name is Lynanne Gutierrez. I'm the Chief Operating and Policy Officer at Groundwork Ohio. And I know we really just appreciate you joining us today. The weather, especially here in Central Ohio, has been challenging for those of us, especially with young ones with closure. So we welcome kids to all our programming. So hunker on down and thanks for being here today with us. I have been leading the early childhood dashboard work for our Groundwork team, where every single team member has been involved over the past couple of years in this project. And you're going to hear from Carrie and I today about the early childhood dashboard that was developed with the Health Policy Institute of Ohio. Carrie, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is Carrie Almasy, and I am a Senior Health Policy Analyst at the Health Policy Institute of Ohio. I lead the early childhood dashboard work for the HPIO team.
Thanks, Carrie. So just a reminder, we have some new folks on the line, hopefully lots of new faces in addition to returning stakeholders to this webinar. Groundwork Ohio is a committed, nonpartisan public policy research and advocacy organization. Our mission is to champion high quality early learning and healthy development strategies from the prenatal period to age 5 that lay a strong foundation for kids, families, and communities. We have been implementing 3 centers of excellence at Groundwork Ohio to advance this vision. The first 2 you see here are focused on policy, maternal and young child health, and early learning. And the third, our Center for Family Voice, is focused on advocacy transformation through the authentic engagement of families in state policy development and advocacy. And all of 3 of the focuses of the center are really highlighted in the dashboard findings. So thank you for your support of both the dashboard and our center focused work. So let's talk about what the early childhood dashboard is. Again, our team will put the link to the dashboard itself in the chat so you can get to exploring. At Groundwork, our work is grounded in the indisputable evidence that investments in early childhood not only benefit the well-being of children and their families, but also pay long-term dividends to the state and our economy. Our youngest children are our future workforce, parents, caregivers, and leaders. We believe we can secure a strong future for Ohio by prioritizing the needs of our youngest and the families that care for them. While we can point to where Ohio has made progress in fostering a landscape that supports young children and their families, there is still significant room for improvement. But we continue to ask ourselves, how will we know if Ohio is the best place to be a young child? And how will we know that every child has the opportunity to reach their full potential? We began work on the early childhood dashboard back in 2021 that would finally answer this question consistently in a way that we could measure it over time and really help policymakers understand the realities facing Ohio families with young children. And after 2 years of extensive research, fact gathering, and input from children and family experts throughout the state, we have completed the early childhood dashboard. The early childhood dashboard is a first of its kind accounting. It incorporates more than 60 metrics across 6 domains, spotlighting the immense challenges broad inequities, and real opportunities there are to improve the lives of our families in our state. The data creates a more complete picture of what it means to be a baby or young child in the state.
Lynn, I'm seeing a black bar across the top of the slides. I don't know if you have a toolbar or something there.
Oh, let me fix
Just want
that.
to let you know.
Thank you.
So before we get started, just wanted to give you a quick background on HPIO. We were so excited to partner with Groundwork on the Early Childhood Dashboard, largely because we know that to achieve our vision of Ohio being a model of health, well-being, and economic vitality, we know that we have to build a strong foundation for Ohio kids. So since 2014, we have been measuring health value in Ohio, which looks at a combination of metrics related to population health and healthcare spending. We know from that data that Ohio children are experiencing worse outcomes in things like poverty and adversity than children in other states. The Early Childhood Dashboard allowed us to dive deeper into that data and explore a fuller picture of the systems and conditions that are leading to the outcomes that we see for kids in Ohio.
Thanks, Carrie. It's been a great partnership between the two of us, and we want to thank our funders, BI3 and the Mount Sinai Health Foundation, for their generous support of this multi-year project and ongoing support of both Groundwork Ohio and the Health Policy Institute of Ohio. I'm going to walk you through briefly the conceptual framework for our dashboard. I'm going to start with the goal. So the dashboard advances equity and catalyzes advocacy and action to lay a strong foundation for Ohio kids, prenatal to 5, families, and communities. And really, in measuring and answering the question around our vision, which is that Ohio is the best place to be a young child and that every child has the opportunity to reach their full potential, we had to identify what outcomes we would know or that would indicate that we've reached this vision. And those positive outcomes for young children are that they're healthy and they're ready to learn. Further, then, in order to benchmark progress around those goals, around healthy and ready to learn outcomes, we needed to investigate systems and community conditions and monitor these over time to build a strong foundation for young children to achieve positive outcomes and reach our vision. These system and community conditions we've organized into 4 different domains: early learning access and quality, healthcare access and quality, early childhood adversity and trauma prevention, and economic stability. Lastly, but most importantly, really our approach, we have integrated equity throughout our approach, and you can see that through the dashboard work, and we'll talk about it a little more throughout this presentation. But our approach was that state policies and investments need to ensure that every child has a strong foundation while racism and other forms of discrimination are dismantled, that's our shared work. And that the voices of Ohio parents and families are amplified and they're engaged in the policies and practices that impact their children. So before we're going to dig into a little more of the detail in our key takeaways, we wanted to have you keep in mind 3 ways that you can act on what you learned today, and we'll remind you of these at the end of our session together as well. So the first is share. Think about who needs to see the dashboard. Identify 5 friends, colleagues, or community members that could use or be interested in learning more from the dashboard, and share the link to the dashboard via email, or you can tag them on social media. On our website, if you explore a little bit, there are some really great shareable images that you can post on your social media channels today and share them with colleagues. In addition to sharing, we're asking you to compare. This tool is meant to be used in action. So use this tool to identify the needs of Ohio's youngest children and families. And we're asking today that you begin to think about how you're going to compare it to proposed state investment and policy change in Ohio's biennial budget deliberations over the next 6 months. And so as our governor and legislature develop Ohio's 2-year budget, the dashboard can really serve as an indispensable tool that'll illuminate areas in need of increased investment, focused attention, and urgent action. And Groundwork, we've already utilized our learnings from the dashboard and stakeholder feedback, including families, to create our budget policy agenda that you can learn more about, and we'll share with you as a link in the chat. So we will be sharing and comparing. As early as next week, we will be listing the state of the state that the governor is planning on giving on Tuesday, January 31st. And again, using this as a tool to measure where investments are needed. The third and really important piece is that we're asking you to engage. So you're going to share, compare, and then engage and educate policymakers with your new knowledge, or continue deepen knowledge. And we're asking you to join us on March 8th, 2023 for Groundwork Ohio Advocacy Day at the Ohio State House. We'll be bringing life to our policy agenda and the needs of young children through meetings with our policymakers to inform them about the needs of young children and families. All right, so what does the data tell us? With over 60 metrics, there is a lot to digest in the report, and we continue to reveal layers of learnings and conversations as we've had the opportunity to kind of investigate over the past couple of years. But in summarizing the data, in its simplest form, we know that the data tells us that Ohio's youngest children need our support to reach their full potential. And we've summarized our key takeaways in these five lines, or these 5 sections. The first is that early investments can lay the foundation for good outcomes. So kindergarten readiness screeners provide an important snapshot of a child's strengths and needs, as well as insight into the diverse experiences Ohio children are having long before entering the kindergarten classroom. And we know that research shows a strong connection between a child's readiness to enter kindergarten and their math and reading skills throughout their academic career. When children are prepared for kindergarten, they're prepared for future academic success. This is why early investment before kindergarten reaps such substantial rewards. Not only does it improve school readiness, but builds a strong foundation for a lifetime of success for Ohio kids. So what does the data tell us about whether Ohio's kids are ready to learn at kindergarten?
So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of that data. We know that Ohio kids are starting behind in kindergarten and staying behind throughout their academic careers. The data show us that 62.1%, or the majority, of Ohio kids do not demonstrate kindergarten readiness when they enter school. And then we see a similar trend for 4th grade reading and 8th grade math, where more than 60% of students are not proficient here in Ohio.
Thanks, Carrie. Our second key takeaway is that babies carry the burden. So what does that mean? In Ohio, babies bear a disproportionate burden of our failing systems. Even where there have been investments in high-quality birth-to-5 interventions, disparities remain. In Ohio, infant mortality rates continue to be worse than the U.S. average at 6.9 infant deaths under age 1 per 1,000 births, with a large and appalling racial disparity. The important goal of reaching a first birthday should be the floor, not the ceiling of success. Yet upon birth, what does the data tell us about the experiences of Ohio babies and their families?
What we see in the data is that Ohio babies and their families are often faced with overwhelming challenges. For example, there are almost twice as many cases of neonatal abstinence syndrome in Ohio than in the US overall. In Ohio, 11 out of every 1,000 babies are born with NAS, which can lead to complications like low birth weight, seizures, and SIDS. Another thing that we see is maltreatment, which is another word for child abuse and neglect. More infants experience maltreatment in Ohio than in most other states. This trend has only gotten worse for Ohio babies. So we saw, as you can see on the screen here, an increase of 20% in infant maltreatment from 2017 to 2020. And finally, most Ohio babies from families with low incomes aren't being served by an early learning program. Nearly 1 in 5 don't have access to programs like Early Head Start and childcare subsidies that are really important to get them prepared and ready to succeed in education and beyond.
Our third takeaway is that Ohio families are strong, but our systems are weak. So, investigating what it means for Ohio families to be strong. Family resiliency is defined as talking together about what to do, working together to solve problems, and families knowing they have strengths to draw on and staying hopeful even in difficult times. Are Ohio families with young children resilient?
Most Ohio parents with young children report that their families are resilient. Yet at the same time, Ohio ranks 50th in the nation for family resiliency. Despite their best problem solving, strength, and hope, our families are carrying the weight of our policy and system barriers. So while Ohio families are strong, our policies, programs, and systems must do a better job of supporting the families who need it most. This really echoes what we're hearing from families across the state, with quotes like, "All families love their kids and want to provide the best for them. And as a parent and caregiver, we put ourselves last. Why is it such a struggle for us to fight, fight, fight?" And mothers have huge roles to play, and society is working against us most of the time. We are missing the village.
Our future depends on fostering the promise of every child. Many families face obstacles that include systemic racism and multi-generational poverty. These challenges disconnect them from the opportunities they need to thrive. How does systemic racism and multi-generational poverty show up throughout the dashboard?
Great question. So the data show us that we need to do more to ensure that every child has the opportunity to reach their full potential. We see that children in some families, particularly young children of color, children with special needs, children with low incomes, and or those who live in underserved communities, are starting at a disadvantage. Like Lynanne said, their families face historical and structural obstacles like systemic racism and poverty that limit their ability to access necessary supports, like quality childcare and jobs with the flexibility to care for 6 children. So for example, one of the data points from the dashboard that you see on the screen is that Black families are more than twice as likely to have to change jobs due to problems with childcare than white families in Ohio. To close these gaps in outcomes, investments and policies must ensure that every child has a strong foundation. We must also work to dismantle racism and all other forms of discrimination.
Thanks, Carrie. And our last takeaway is that there are families behind these facts. Each data point in the dashboard represents the experiences of real Ohio children and families, but their voices are often missing from the picture. Insights, perspectives, and stories from Ohio families are also critical data that must be amplified to provide context and meaning to the numbers. We know from our work at the Center for Family Voice that parents and caregivers are seeking deeper relationships with and recognition by the systems that they rely upon. They want their voices to be heard when it comes to the future of their children. And increasing their engagement in policymaking actually yields substantial returns for individual children, their families, and the systems that seek to serve them. Storytelling ensures that data is grounded in the experiences of Ohio children and communities. 5 families who are engaged in Groundwork Ohio's Family Action Network were interviewed and have graciously shared their personal stories with us through a video interview and written story for this dashboard. We are sharing one story on this webinar today. The remainder are available on the dashboard website, but I am pleased to share with you and introduce you to Lori Jarvis. Here's Lori's story.
Behind every number is a real child, a real family. Their stories are as important as any statistic.
Well, I'm almost 35 years old, married, mother of 4 little girls, ages from 15 down to 3. They are my world. My youngest, she is about to turn 4. She is my little CP warrior. We learned that she had had a stroke during utero. She was diagnosed with left hemiparesis cerebral palsy. It affects her entire left side, everything from eating, talking, hand movements, walking, climbing, running. She was recently diagnosed with epilepsy due to the stroke. We spend an average of about 4 days a week at Cincinnati Children's. Financially, it's been hard because I am unable to work due to the amount of appointments and help that she needs. As of today, she walks, she talks, she climbs, she runs, she jumps. She has no cognitive delays whatsoever. She is thriving. When she was first diagnosed, they told us that there was a high possibility that she would be nonverbal, non-mobile, and she would probably be G-tube fed. She does go to preschool. My experience with Head Start started when I was just a little girl, and I wanted my kids to have the same kind of step up in life. I'm not made to be a teacher. Head Start taught me what needed to be done before kindergarten. Our current home visitor has been here the last 7 years and has become part of our family. They have helped with the diagnosis of my youngest. They helped me get it started up with Help Me Grow program. One of the challenges that our family have come across when it comes to our youngest is the disparity between income guidelines. We do receive food stamps and we do receive medical. Each program has different guidelines to what is considered poverty. So you have your income guidelines, and as soon as you hit that guideline, they cut you off. And then we spend months trying to just adjust, only for a month or two to be set back into debt. If we have an emergency come up, we have to decide, do we not pay the electric this month and fix the car? So our family has had to make the decisions, okay, well, you're eligible for a raise, should you take it? If you take it, do we lose our food? Does our youngest lose her medical? Do we lose her Social Security just because you took a little bit extra money on the hour? We're stuck. We should have that option of bettering our lives so we no longer need the assistance. I think the biggest thing that our family could really use is me working. But unfortunately for me to have even a part-time job is almost impossible. So I feel that there should be programs out there for families like us, families with a child with physical or mental disabilities that prevent a parent from working, who doesn't have the ability to pay for specialized daycare or childcare. There should be some type of program to help pay for those parents. I know other states have programs like that. I'm not just a stay-at-home mom. I'm essentially doing everything a nurse does, everything an aide does. It's more than just taking her to the doctor every once in a while. It's a life. I incorporate physical therapy here at home, occupational therapy, speech. So an hour for physical therapy, an hour for occupational, an hour for speech, and then an hour for school here at home. And then on top of it, she is epileptic, so I'm constantly on seizure watch. So I was doing Heimlich maneuvers on her almost daily, just working on learning how to chew and eat. She has currently over 30 specialists on her care team. I've always known it's hard to take care of children with disabilities, but you don't realize how hard it is physically, mentally, and emotionally until you have to do it yourself. All those things that most mothers don't think about, I worry about constantly. Will she live the life that she deserves to have? Or will she go to college? Will she get married? Will she have children of her own? Will she drive a car? I worry about mine and my husband's future, but not quite as much as I do with my kids. If I wind up in a little tiny studio apartment because I've spent everything and given everything to my kids, then I'm happy.
Well, thank you again to Lori Jarvis, her and her family there from Claremont County, for sharing her story. So now that we know what the data has told us and heard directly from Ohio families, where should Ohio invest? We must invest early in Ohio's children to achieve equity and lay a strong foundation for every child. When our systems, policies, and communities are structured to support Ohio's youngest children, families can thrive. These investments put Ohio on a path to becoming a healthier, more productive, and economically vibrant state.
So the 4 areas that you see on the screen are especially critical for ensuring that children are healthy and ready to learn. The dashboard is broken up to show key indicators of Ohio's performance across these domains. Now we're going to walk you briefly through one of the domains to help you navigate the report. At the beginning of each domain, you'll find a family story like Lori's that includes family photos, a written story, and a QR code that you can use to access a full video of that family story. Next, each of the domains highlights key data points using graphics that really illustrate what the data tell us. So you'll see a couple pages of each domain where we highlight the key points for you in graphic form. And then each of the domains breaks down all of the detailed data in tables that go through each metric in the domain. So now I'm going to take a moment to walk you through all of the features of those data tables so you can really understand what you're seeing. First, you'll see the metric's name and a short description of that data on the left. To the right of that, we display the most recent data value for Ohio and tell you the year that that comes from. Next is the level of trend or the degree of change over the past 3 years. In the farthest right column, you'll see Ohio's performance compared to the US overall for the most recent year. And then finally, also want to point out that when disaggregated data were available, we also measured if there were any disparities or gaps in outcomes among groups of Ohioans. So you'll find those below the metrics in gray. I also want to note that all of the detail behind all this data, including data sources, is available in a data appendix that you can download from the dashboard webpage. So I noticed that we had a question about the family resiliency metric. You can get all of the information behind that data, sources, what goes into those questions, etc., from that data appendix. We also have a methodology report available on that webpage that you can download to explain how we've got to those calculations and how all of this came together. And finally, near the end of the dashboard, we take all of the information that we learned and summarize Ohio's strengths and challenges in early childhood. So you can see where Ohio ranks compared to other states, as well as where we're moving in the right direction and where we still have room for improvement. We also note important policy changes like increased funding for home visiting services that have contributed to improved outcomes for Ohio's kids. So now I'm going to hand it back over to Lynn Ann, and she's going to wrap us up. Lynn Ann, I think you're muted. Still muted.
All right, I'm back.
Yes.
What I was saying a couple times was, I hope you're excited, if you're listening here, excited as we are to finally have this work available for you. It is a robust and comprehensive look at what it means to be a young child, and we look forward to exploring and learning alongside you in the coming year. Just a reminder of the 3 ways you can act today. So the first is share. You've kind of been teased a little bit with some of the data that is in the dashboard, and I hope that you're voraciously scrolling through the dashboard if you're at your computer right now. Think about who needs to see this. Certainly we want your policymakers to see this, your friends, your colleagues, that person that's maybe writing a last minute grant for your nonprofit today that needs some data. think of who could be interested and share it via email, or please tag them on social media. Again, going to groundworkohio.org/dashboard, we have great shareable images for you to share on those channels. The second is compare. So again, we are going to be using this tool to identify the needs of Ohio's youngest children and seeing how it measures up to what our policymakers plan to do in this state's budget in the coming months. And lastly, please engage with us and educate your policymakers. They need to hear from us, but they most importantly need to hear from you, those of you who are in communities, who are serving families, about your experience and the experiences of the families you serve. So please join us on March 8th. That's Groundwork Ohio's Advocacy Day at the Ohio State House. We're putting the registration link in the chat box now. Our program begins at 9 a.m. at the State House on March 3rd. We have legislative meetings planned and are scheduling them for you beginning at 1:30 in the afternoon after a formal program where we have some great speakers lined up. We have the PN3 Policy Impact Center from Vanderbilt University coming to share with you, and Sonia Manzano, better known as Maria, on Sesame Street to provide a keynote address. And then after the legislative meetings in the afternoon, we're inviting you to a cocktail reception we are hosting alongside the National Black Child Development Institute of Cleveland. So thank you so very much for sticking with us. We're going to take a few minutes to look at some of those questions that you've put in the chat box and make sure we can answer any of them here. I see one question about county level data. So there are, and I'll let Carrie piggyback on this, there are county level data available for some of the metrics. As we had challenges with the data that I'll let Carrie share a little bit about, we were unable to do those for all of the metrics, but our hope is that throughout this, we can help you. I'm sorry, I was getting a note from someone here. I wanted to make sure I was answering the correct question and you guys were seeing what you needed to see. Our hope is that we'll provide more county level data throughout the coming year. So for example, we're working on county level fact sheets for our Advocacy Day on March 8th. So again, that data appendix is a great resource of the county level data in addition to some mapping that we did in the content of the dashboard.
Yep,
Carrie, do you want to comment?
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. I also point people towards county health rankings as a really great resource for a lot of the publicly available data that's available at the county level across the United States and in Ohio.
Awesome. Carrie, are you seeing other questions?
I'm sorry, everyone, for any issues that we had with my audio. Hopefully you can hear me better now. My computer likes to have issues with Zoom sometimes. I can see. Lynn, there's a question here that you might be able to help with.
Perfect.
They're asking, what makes Ohio unique and why are our scores so low, and what states are doing better, and what can Ohio do to improve?
Well, those are some great big questions. I think that you'll see from the data dashboard, you got a flash of the state rankings up against the US. But we do have a lot of strengths and ways that we're making progress. It is true that often as we're making progress, we're not keeping pace with other states. There are certainly cause for concern, but also unique opportunities where we have been building on progress. So that section at the very end of the dashboard, looking at strengths and weaknesses and trends, is a great place to start. Our state is unique. We work with early childhood advocates across the nation and are also always reminding ourselves of our context, our 5 major metro areas, our large rural communities and Appalachian communities encompassing a third of our state. So there are lots of unique barriers and there's lots of great strengths. So we have really zeroed in our budget policy agenda. You'll see on quality childcare and maternal and young child health is two focus areas for this budget where we believe that we have opportunities and really an urgency around making the most progress in terms of increased state investment and increased focus, attention, and targeted policy towards our youngest children, particularly our infants and toddlers and babies. So Ohio has lots of things to be proud of, but our vision is to make this to be the best place to be a young child. You've heard from Governor DeWine that he shares this, really shares this vision and is advancing that. So we're excited to support where we can those areas to make progress. And like Carrie mentioned, we've noted where progress has been made over time. So lots of things to be grateful for, but we have an urgent need when it comes to our very youngest kids. And we're hoping to make progress this budget yet on investments that meet their needs.
We had another question about appreciating the use and value of the data dashboard in advocacy at the legislative level. But has there been any consideration of how the dashboard might be utilized with providers in shaping programs and services? So I think that the dashboard is a great tool for use in providing programs and services because it provides a snapshot of where Ohio is excelling and where we have room for improvement. So it can help us sort of guide and shape our efforts for where we need additional work and focus, but it also provides context for the problems and issues that our families are facing and gives us detail needed to be able to provide the supports and resources to the families of Ohioans that are most experiencing challenges by looking at and exploring that disaggregated data. Anything to add there, Lynn?
Yeah, I think that if you are leading or implementing a program or a specific intervention, you're obviously coming across, when you integrate or providing these services to families, they're coming to you with their full selves, with all of their issues, regardless of where your intervention is focused, whether it be in early learning or health or job training or economic stability. What I think would be a great challenge as you sit as a professional or program provider is to look at those metrics that you're not as familiar with or you're not used to looking at, and they can help guide questions of your program, of your families about really just the complex issues that they're dealing with that may not always be at the forefront of when they show up to your program or to your office to receive care. So I think a great example of that perhaps is in the economic stability domain. You can take a look at homelessness and whether families have a car and how young children and families are really making ends meet, whether they have food, access to healthy food at home. These types of things I know come up for kids all the time, but I think challenging your area of practice to really understand the full needs of families has been a good exercise for us and can be the same for local providers. Let's see, are we seeing any more questions?
We have a question. Oh, go ahead, Amy.
Nope, I see a question in the chat about updating the data. How frequent will you be updating this?
Great. So our plan is to update this every 2 years. And so all of the detailed decisions about that Carrie has really led in helping us determine how we can view trend over time and progress over time has been taken into consideration as we've chosen the metrics in this dashboard. So we expect to have a fully new product in 2 years, updating this data. We hope it'll be improved. We hope it'll change and grow and look a little different based on all of your all's feedback. And we, again, are really looking to partner with local communities, local leaders, local providers to tell a more complete story. So where we have this statewide data, how can we get more information, answer more of our questions, and share a complete story, whether it's through additional publications, webinar, other learning opportunities in the community. So we hope you'll invite us to be part of those conversations, and we invite you to as well. Thanks, Amy, for helping us round up questions. Is there anything else left in the Q&A box? All right. Well, we hope that you've enjoyed exploring the dashboard. Your questions were great and appreciated. We hope you keep them coming. We hope you remember to share, compare, and engage. And thank you for joining us today and acting now for young children in those ways. We will see you on March 8th at Groundwork Ohio's Advocacy Day at the Ohio State House. Take care and stay warm.
Thanks, everyone.